What is up, everyone, and welcome to the NY Patriot Show. Today, I got a very special guest with me, and when I say that, I really do mean that. Back by popular demand as well. This is a guest that I have had multiple people ask me to please do more work with. They thought that she did a good job on research on prior episodes that I have worked with her on as well. So if you have not heard of NYX, this is the first time you are listening or watching on the live, I highly suggest to go back and check out the other stuff that we have done, especially the Starbucks episode. I really thought that was great. But yeah, today, as you can see in the title, me and Nix will be talking about the artist and the occultist, H.R. Giger. Now, the whole reason I'm even covering him and basically what this episode will be about, nothing too crazy deep. It's just the fact of he was an artist that I did not know of for a while, was an occultist. So I found that interesting. And then when I had also realized how many people he has worked with and this and that, I just found this to be a very interesting person and topic. And also, part of the reason why I'm covering it too, for me, in my life, and even the people around me when I was younger, the people I grew up with, some of the people I still talk to today that I knew from kindergarten, we are still very much fans of the original first two, at least, Alien movies. That shit stuck with us as a kid. That shit, what the fuck? Shit is crazy. And that image is iconic. And he's an occultist. So, to me, I find that interesting how someone who's into the occult has left such an impact on humanity with his art. Just think about that. So that's why I found it interesting to just do a little bit of some basics that Nix is going to cover about, his background, and then I'll just cover and talk a little bit about some of the occult stuff that he's done. And I think it'll be an interesting episode just talking about some of that. Without me going on anymore, I will introduce Nix. I know she does not have a show, but please at least plug your Instagram that you do, post up
Yeah,
some interesting stuff on.
sure. Thanks for having me.
Of
So
course.
my Instagram is NYX. That's NYX period 1223. You can find me there and my posts and stuff I research on there, which can be on a variety of topics.
Nice. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes. And all right. Unfortunately, for a little bit, I may have to. I'm gonna have to kind of close the chat and pay attention. So all the people that are jumping in on the live, I really do appreciate it. But when I actually have to cover information myself, I really can't be minding the chat that much. So my apologies. I will get back when I can. So go and go to your thing next, and let's get it going.
Sure. So Hans Rudy Giger was born on February 5th, 1940 in I'm not sure I'm going to get this right, but Graubünden, Switzerland. His father was a pharmacist, and he viewed art as an unprofitable profession and wanted him to pursue a career in pharmacy. So Giger was influenced by frightening night terrors he had as a child. His sister took him to the museum to see an exhibit with a mummy, and initially he was terrified. But then every Sunday after church, he would go back up to the museum to look at it. And in a lot of his artwork, you'll see Egyptian themes because of that. So in 1962, he moved to Zurich, where he studied architecture and industrial design at the School of Applied Arts until 1970. His success began in 1969 when H.H. Kunz, co-owner of Switzerland's first poster publishing company, printed and distributed Giger's first posters. And this was a good way to get your art out, as opposed to waiting to be invited to participate in a gallery exhibit.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
So,
That's like making up posters and like like when you're watching people like throw them up on walls and like paste.
yep. Um, So his style has been adopted to many forms of media, album covers, furniture, tattoos, video games, and movies. He initially started out in pen and ink, and then he moved to oil paintings before moving to his trademark monochromatic airbrush pieces.
Yeah, that's freaking amazing work. Some of the stuff.
Yes.
I mean,
And
regardless of like what it is and how I don't like that, it's too much for me or whatever.
mm-hmm.
I mean, I will say that guy's got a gift with what he does.
Yeah, and he was inspired like by the surrealist art movement, like Salvador Dali. And it's funny, like we talked about the Starbucks episode, but I did, while doing my research, noticed he was 3 degrees removed from Melusine. So that was very interesting to me. So from Film Magazine, this is a quote from them describing Giger's artwork. And they said his visions are typically of the intertwining of people and machines, often in an overtly sexual fashion, in a style Giger referred to as biomechanical. Included would also be sacrilegious images, satanic depictions, and so on, along with some obviously unchristian depictions of the human body and explorations of sexuality. So,
that was one of the things that actually, I mean, I guess maybe it just shows like how ignorant I am to some things, but I was actually surprised when I started digging into some of his stuff. I was like, yo, he does have some like heavily sexualized.
Oh yeah. Well, like I said, I felt like maybe we should start calling this biomechanical alien porn, because some of the stuff I was like, what?
No, he even talked about in interviews how his mom was asking him, like, do you have to paint, whatever? Do you have to do it like that? Like, he would even say that his mom was upset with something.
No, she wasn't actually, because in the documentary Dark Star, which you can find on Tubi, it was near the end of his life. He's in really bad health, and I can't say the documentary is incredibly fascinating, but his mom was very supportive. His parents were very supportive of his artwork, and his mom would often attend things for his art, so she was very proud of him.
Despite that the first picture doesn't look that clear.
Yeah. So, and I will get to those in a second.
Yeah, I figured I'll just bring it up.
It shows kind of, yeah. But so Ridley Scott, who made Alien, was shown Giger's artwork from his Necronomicon by screen director Dan O'Brien, and they both felt very strongly that this was the type of representation they wanted for their film's antagonist. So Scott met with Giger, and he recruited him to work on all aspects of the alien and its environment, including the surface of the planetoid, the derelict spacecraft, and all 4 forms of the alien from egg to adult. Now, when we were talking about like some of his stuff is overtly sexual in nature, when they were doing Alien, initially the design of Giger's xenomorph eggs, they had the obvious resemblance and appearance of a vagina. And the movie was to be screened in many Catholic countries, and there was fear that it would be banned if the eggs were left that way. So they asked Giger to change the design, and as in a tongue-in-cheek gesture, he changed the design to a cross, stating, "Seen from above, they would form a cross that people in Catholic countries are so fond of looking at." So they kind of like nixed his vaginal looking egg, and in his response, like to people who would be offended by that, like the Catholic countries made it into a cross as kind of, I guess, as a mocking.
You know what I found interesting though, like like when they show like his eggs opening, like in the Alien movies, like before it comes out, when it's just like that top has opened up those 4 little sides, like if you just take that image and not think that's an alien egg and just look at the image, you'd be like, I've seen that in like religious art.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I've seen
Yep.
that in other, occult things. Like,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And so Giger, being part of the special effects team, they won an Academy Award for Best Achievement in Visual Effects for the design work on the film. And he was involved in all the Alien franchise movies, his work and everything. So, and the main character, the alien or the xenomorph, is directly from Giger's Necronomicon.
yeah,
So,
which that, I don't know if people know, and that's something I will go into when she is done. He does have a book himself, the Necronomicon, and he does have his own tarot deck.
mm-hmm.
You know,
So Giger was Salvador Dali showed Alejandro Jodorowsky's Giger's work, and he was brought on the unproduced movie version of the 1965 Frank Herbert science fiction book Dune, which Jodorowsky was set to direct in the 1970s. However, plans fell through, and many years later, David Lynch actually directed the film. So but he only used
David Lynch.
Yeah. Right. So using only rough concepts by Giger, though, and Giger had wished to work with Lynch. He even stated that Lynch's film Eraserhead was closer than even Giger's own films to realizing his vision.
Oh, not to get it off on a tangent on Lynch, because you mentioned Lynch, and then everybody knows I love Twin Peaks and his stuff. But he does say Eraserhead actually was probably his most spiritual cult movie he's made. And if you think about, if have you seen Eraserhead?
I haven't.
I mean, it's kind of a stretch, but if you look at the thing that's like in that movie, and then you look at like one of the stages of the alien, it's like almost not like a stretch, if you know. But oh fuck, I forgot what else I was gonna say about Lynch. Oh, but yeah, he ended up doing Dune, and honestly, in my opinion, I wonder if one of the reasons why they chose him instead. Lynch's art is just, in my opinion, just as occulted as what I'm going to show with this guy,
right?
But it's much more pleasing to
yeah, right.
larger audience of the world.
Yeah, I don't know. I think how I would describe Giger's art, besides kind of being kind of raunchy and obscene in some instances, it's very dark and visceral and almost like a primordial feel to it. Like I said before, like I know when you're talking before, a lot of the from the alien itself, like a lot of those pictures he drew, they almost look like trilobite fossils. They had that look to it. So I don't know. It's very dark, primordial, like visceral feel I get when I look at his artwork. But so just a real quick side note, though, on Alejandro Jodorowsky. He is a Chilean French avant-garde filmmaker, and he's considered the first ever midnight cult film maker. And he was best known for his 70s films El Topo and The Holy Mountain, and he's been venerated by the cult cinema enthusiasts. But he's extensively written and lectured about his own spiritual system, which he called psychomagic and psycho-shamanism, which borrows from alchemy, the tarot, and Buddhism, and shamanism. So that's kind of another connection to another occultist, is Alejandro Jodorowsky. And he's a very strange individual, and that's like he himself could be a whole nother episode. So
you said the Holy Mountain?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, the Holy Mountain. Yep.
I'm trying to think, it was, and what year was? I'm not to put you on the spot.
In the 1970s, these were made.
Because I can't remember if it was the Mountain or the Holy Mountain that I had watched. If somebody actually like a Discord watch, having like a movie watch party, and I was watching it. I mean, and that shit was just weird and occult. Like it was obvious, like they weren't
Well,
hiding it.
it might have
Weird
been
occult
then.
movie. And you know what blew me away? I'm sitting there in the chat too, and like there's this weird part that comes up, and they got like these monks that all have like these same type of necklaces on with the same occult symbol on it. You know, it's like they're not hiding it. It's like part of the scene. They're all wearing it. And I wish I could remember the name of it because it's like I don't even think they're even existing anymore. But I was just like, yo, that's the same exact fucking logo on this fucking hardcore QAnon account. You know what I'm saying? That's famous and everybody's sending money to. Like it's a fucking psyop. Wake up.
Yeah, this movie was in the 70s, and there was a lot of occult references and symbolism in it. And I think it might have been like a metaphorical alchemical journey. The Holy Mountain was about. But I haven't seen it, but I've heard it's really, really bizarre.
It might be the same movie I'm thinking of because it was just like I was just like, wow. Like I caught a lot of it, but I was like, I cannot understand how someone, it's just a random person, could watch that and have any idea what the fuck it was.
Yeah,
like
if you don't have some of that knowledge, you're probably really going to be lost.
I mean, like things just switch. You just go to something completely different. And you're like, well, what?
Yeah, I mean, I can even say myself, you know, before, you know, doing the research and becoming more familiar with, you know, the topic of the occult. There's so many movies, you know, that I didn't view the way I view now, knowing what I know now. Like I see so much more, and I see like even a, you know, a deeper or hidden meaning that, you know, they may be going for that just the average person is totally going to miss, and it's going to go over their head.
Yeah.
So, Giger was also a personal friend of Timothy Leary, the American psychologist and author known for his advocacy of psychedelic drugs.
See, you know what? And I'm sorry to interrupt again.
Oh, no, you're fine.
This is like even another thing that I was, and I guess it'll probably make more sense when the series comes out. When I was touching upon stuff with the eye, you know, I was talking about how, in my opinion, the Grateful Dead logo is actually like your eyeball, in the hyaloid canal is that a electrical thing that you're seeing going across. Now they're also very big with LSD, and that has to do with changing your pupil. Now, a lot of his art is basically black and white and the silver in between, and I do believe there is a lot of occultism in there. In my opinion, you could still show a lot of occult stuff going on just in black and white.
Oh, sure.
Your pupil in sclera. You can show a lot of occult stuff. So maybe the fact of him using black and white was even a reason for that.
Well, that's interesting you bring that up because, for instance, like Frank
Baum, if I look at it like that, some of his weird shit does make more sense to me if I put it in that context.
Yeah. You think of Frank Baum, who did The Wizard of Oz. He was an occultist. But The Wizard of Oz starts out in black and white, and then it goes into color once they go to Oz. So, yeah, I think that there's something there with that. So next, I'm going to move on real quick to Giger's relationships because they are important, and especially his first love definitely played a significant part in his artwork. But he was in a relationship with Swiss stage actress and model Lee Tobler, or Tobler, I'm not sure which way it's pronounced, until she died by suicide in 1975. So Tobler lived with Giger in squalor and often inside condemned buildings, and eventually they became romantically involved. Although the relationship was open, it remained deeply intense and creatively inspiring together. Tobler suffered from emotional insecurity, heavy drug dependence, and physical exhaustion from theatrical tours. And Giger also, like a lot of the times, had her model for his artwork. On May 19th, 1975, which was Whit Monday or Pentecost Monday, which is celebrated the day after Pentecost, she shot herself while lying in bed. And she was, wait for it, 27.
Oh, she was 27. And wait, and say how did she do it again?
She shot herself while lying in bed.
She was 27.
Mhm.
Sounds like something. I was getting confused with Kurt Cobain for a second.
So, but Giger was accused by some people of negatively influencing Tobler, who was regularly dealing with depression and with the blackness and morbidity of his work. Her death devastated Giger, and it haunted him until he passed. And her face haunts many of Giger's paintings of ethereal women in many of his artwork. So, like, that's one of them. That's Lee Tobler or Tobler in the picture you have up right now, and then the other one as well. So you'll see her face in many of his images on artwork. And he even said in the Dark Star documentary, he admitted, he's like, that his paintings probably didn't help her state of mind. And yeah, so sources claimed when Giger revealed his first painting of Tobler to her, it was titled "The I Am Lee." She was furious. She walked into his studio wielding a knife and sliced an X through the painting. So after Tobler took her own life, rumors began to swirl that Giger kept her skeleton in his home. This rumor ultimately turned out to be false. However, he did have a momentum of her death in his home. Bill Malone, who's an American horror filmmaker who had worked with Giger on concepts for film that were never made, noticed little holes in one of Giger's canvases while at Giger's house. And he commented on it and said, "It looks like someone damaged one of your paintings." And Giger's response was, "No, that's where my girlfriend blew her brains out."
You know something I've thought of that you just said, like, never made. I've sometimes not a lot, but like you do hear that sometimes about like certain people, they start working on a project, oh, it never made.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, was it made and we just decided this just isn't for the public?
Yeah, I don't know. It didn't
You know,
even.
I have wondered about things like that
Yeah,
before.
sure.
You know, like, was it made and just circulated around, like, the group?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. Couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
I did think it was interesting, though, real quick on a side note before I continue with his other relationships. While I was watching the Dark Star documentary, like as I was starting to get into it, and just researching for this episode and looking at his artwork, like, and knowing that he had night terrors and stuff like that influenced it, I started thinking like how in depth and detailed these things were. And I'm like, what if he's channeling something? And when I was watching a documentary later on, one of Giger's agents came up and he said the same thing. And he said that he believed he was channeling something and that he's not typically the one to believe those types of things. So I thought that was very interesting that could also be having an influence on his artwork. And if he's having these night terrors or whatever, he used to say he's not like either intentionally or unintentionally astral projecting, and seeing these beings. So continuing on with his relationship. So he married Mia Bozinego from 1979 to 1981. And even after they divorced, she worked at his assistant for nearly 20 years because they remained good friends. And he even left her his parents' holiday home. And there was an odd comment in the documentary by her. She said when she was in the hospital and very sick with hepatitis C, Giger told her, "When you are sick, I can't work, and when I can't work, I go crazy," or something to that effect. And I'm like, that's pretty cold. Like, this woman's probably not like, wanting to be in the hospital with hepatitis C, especially like back then, when they still didn't even have like cures for that and everything. And I'm thinking, that was a pretty cold thing to say, like, you being sick's getting in the way of my work. Maybe it didn't happen like that. Maybe that's taken out of context, but that kind of I'm like, well, maybe that's why he left her his parents' holiday home. like I don't know, but I thought that was just kind of a rather cold thing to say. But I mean,
and like, well, I mean, I guess I was going to say the funny thing about it, but it's really not funny. But like, it's actually like probably legit, and I mean, let's all be real. Probably that's actual, real, legit truth.
mm-hmm,
That when
mm-hmm,
you're in that position, it is an inconvenience.
mm-hmm.
You normally don't come out and say it because it's just not nice
Yeah,
to say. So
yeah,
that is a little fucking cold. But like, let's all be honest too. Shit like that, it is actually will become an inconvenience in your
mm-hmm.
regular life.
And the thing is too, I mean, she still, thinks very fondly of him. I mean, that, they've been friends, all the way up to his passing. So when she said it, she didn't say it in a context like that. But like, I'm thinking, like, yeah, okay, it is an inconvenience, but that's just like a
Oh
cold
yeah,
way
it's
to
just like,
put
oh
it,
man,
like,
yeah. Like,
so.
like that's what I'm getting at too, is like that's just like even showing just like the lack of empathy as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
when you come at it at that of an extreme, that's cold.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure, for sure. So he married Carmen Maria. I'm not going to probably get her last name right. She fell in 2006, and she is currently the director of the H.R. Giger Museum, and she was married to him up to the day she died. Or, I'm sorry, the day he died in May of 2014 when he suffered injuries from a fall. So those were his relationships. I do have a list of some of the things he worked on, and then that's pretty much it for my part that you wanted me to cover. So for films, he worked on Dune, which was the unproduced one that Alejandro Jodorowsky was going to do. All the Alien franchise, Poltergeist 2, the other side, which I remember watching that as a kid, and like that old man like terrified the shit out of me.
There was a couple of aliens that he actually had to contact them, and I think even made kind of like a little bit of like a public dig. That was like they did not even give me. I mean, most people, I guess, who knew of who he was, knew that's his art.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess like not everybody knew who he was. But like I think there was two out of those movies that they did not even mention that he was the designer of it.
Right.
He
Yeah.
actually had to like have them add that back in, and they were like, "Oh, it was an accident," or I forgot what their pathetic excuse was. But in my opinion, to me, it was kind of like they're like, "Yeah, screw him."
Yeah.
If they didn't even credit him for the design.
Right. The next film, I don't think it's going to be one anybody's familiar with. Killer Condom. Species 1 and 2. Batman Forever, Future Kill, Tokyo, The Last Megalopolis, Prometheus, which, was a big movie. And he also won awards like the Inkpot Award in 1979 and the Science Fiction Hall of Fame in 2013. So he worked with numerous recording artists. Some you may be familiar with, some you may not. So he worked with Celtic Frost on their Temega Therion album.
Yeah, I have that. I'll pull that up later too. Yeah.
And what I remember what I told you earlier is what is interesting is the lead singer from that band, Tom Gabriel Fisher. He became one of Giger's assistants. And when I was watching the documentary Dark Star, which if people want to watch that, it's on Tubi. I don't know if I mentioned that before, and I think it might be on Plex too. But anyways, this Tom Gabriel Fisher was wearing Crowley's universal hexagram on a pendant on his necklace. So he also worked with Magma on their album Attack, Emerson, Lake, and Palmer on their album Brain Salad Surgery, Debbie Harry, Blondie on the Cuckoo album cover, and her videos Backfired and Now I Know You Know. Which Blondie or Debbie Harry is very interesting too. She's good friends with Marina Abramovich. Yeah, they did one of those cake parties where they had one cake to look like Marina Abramovich and one to look like Debbie Harry. And those were the ones where you see the it looks like a mock cannibalism party. The way the cakes are made to look like human, and the insides are made to look like internal organs and stuff like that.
You ever notice that lady's name pops up like a lot?
Which Marina Abramovich?
Yeah, like there's eventually, whenever I do finally get to it with all the other stuff I have planned, eventually I'm like gonna cover some like wild, weird, huge cult that I even have video of her there.
Yeah, I've heard of like people. I've started kind of looking into her too a lot because there's some things I've heard about her and that like super like disturbing. And I also think it'd be good to do an episode on her because most like I've done like podcast search for her and everything, and she's often brought up like things in like the Pizzagate thing or just like her relationships with celebrities, but I've never seen an actual like episode done exclusively on her, and I think that would be something that would be really great to do because I think there is a shit ton of stuff there that can be uncovered.
And what I love too is that when I do finally do this episode and I show the part that of her there, she's literally straight up even saying, "Oh yeah, there's like Gurdjieff symbolism here, Rosicrucian or Knights Templar." Like she was even saying, like, "Yeah, I'm hearing this stuff all over the places." Like she's straight up saying it's from a
yeah, and it's funny because to the public, she says, "Oh, it's just performance art." Okay, performance art, like magic performance art, maybe.
Yeah.
So, Giger also worked with Hyde on the album Hide Your Face, Carcass on the album Heartwork, Flo de Cologne on Mumium, Danzig on Danzig's 3, How the Gods Kill, the Dead Kennedys album Frankenchrist, the poster of the insert of Landscape XX, which led to an obscenity trial. Atrocities, Hallucinations. He made a customized mic stand for Korn's Jonathan Davis. There was I don't know if I'm saying this right. Is it Ibanez guitars?
Yes,
there was the series HR Giger signature models with artwork on the body, and then he worked with a band called Tripicon. He also had the Giger bars in Switzerland, where it had a lot of like sculptures and artwork of his.
I think he had one. If I could screw this up, there's a tunnel, the limelight, or something. There was, I think, even a major club in the city had one of his bars in it for a bit. In New York.
Okay.
Yeah. I think he has like 2 or 3, or at least that one time did.
Yeah, I know he's got 2 in Switzerland, it said. But maybe there's like exhibits that go around like that too. Like, and then he worked on a few video games as well. So that is all I have on my end for his life. Oh, actually, there is one more thing. So when he was younger, when he was a preteen, as a kid, he had a fascination with trains. And he built his first ghost train as a preteen, and he would charge neighborhood kids a small fee to ride it. So when he got older, and if you watch the film Dark Star, later on in life, he built, an adult version. And the person in the documentary, showing it, described it as a prenatal journey with suffering fetuses and demonic women. So yeah, it looked pretty creepy. It looked kind of cool, and they show him like riding around on this little train. It reminded me of the train of like Silver Spoons, but like Train from Hell or something. I don't know. Like, so, but yeah. And I think the funniest, like, I mean, the documentary was kind of dry and stuff, but I like one of the funniest like parts of the documentary, I think, was when he was riding on his little train. And like I said, he was an old man when this was filmed, and he died not long after. But he had like this cat, and he's had like named the cat, like his past 3 cats, the same name. So his cat's name was Muggy the Third, and the cat's in the railroad track, and he's like, "Yeah, the way, cat," and I thought that was probably the highlight of the film because it was hysterical. But so yeah, a lot of his artwork was incorporated into this like little train ride where you go through you know, doors that open and sculptures in the garden and stuff like that. So yeah. So that was what I found on my end for like his early life and his relationships, influence in his art, and some of the people he worked with.
Nice. Very good. Thank you. That was
Yeah.
great. That was exactly what I expected you to do. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Here I do have you know, can you see that on the screen right now?
Mm-hmm.
All right, because I have to control the pictures. Here is this an interview that I came across. I'm going to just read a few parts of it, but an interview with H.R. Giger, Baphomet Lament, an interview with H.R. Geiger by R.F. Paul. This part right here, I'd like to discuss some of the influences on your work. Let's begin with Lovecraft. Yes, Lovecraft. I have an old friend, Sergius Golovin, whatever, who's a
I came
writer.
across that name.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah, I did, but I can't remember. I had a note in the column, and I was like, shoot, I'm like, I forgot to look back at that. But yeah, I have Sergius Golovin noted.
That's great. Golovin, who's a writer of myths and fables, sort of a specialist in them. He knows a lot about magic, and now even now, I don't. I'm sure he didn't tell the guy when he said magic. I'm sure he didn't spell it out. So I mean, I guess it could be the author, but I mean, this magic does have a K at the end of it, even. So I mean, he knows a lot about magic with a K. In the late 60s, he gave me a book by Lovecraft and turned me on to the name Necronomicon, the Book of the Dead. And he told me that my entire corpus of work could easily be pages out of the Necronomicon. Now, while I very much admire Lovecraft's work, his main influence upon my own was simply the name, just the name that he just really just took the Necronomicon from him because of the name. There is a funny story concerning Sergius, who used to tell everyone he knew that the walls of my home were covered with paintings from the Necronomicon, which at the time was not true at all, but which since, of course, became true as I began to cover them. The passages and the spell are demonstrative examples of turning my walls into sort of a Lovecraftian temple.
And they do show that in the documentary, like how his walls are covered. And there is a room, I forget what he called the room, but it's a huge mural of Baphomet in it.
Yes. Then it says Aleister Crowley. Well, if you are interested in magic and the occult, then the name Aleister Crowley should be on the top of your list. Though I must say that I tried to study his books and his systems of magic, and I found it quite difficult to understand him. But I was always interested in what kind of paintings he painted, though it took many years before I was actually able to see a few of them. I have a copy somewhere of the catalog that was produced for the Crowley Art exhibition that was held in London back in 1998, as well as the catalog for an exhibition that was held in 1932 in Berlin. Most of the works I've seen are portraits of his friends, and they took me to and they look to me very evil. The ladies that he painted are terrible looking, which I don't like too much, since all of my ladies in my paintings are beautiful and aesthetically pleasing to me anyway. So, but like he's at least he's acknowledging he knows who he is. And then he even goes on to say stuff on Austin Osman Spar, however you say his name, Chaos Magician. If you haven't heard of him, you should have. Go look him up. He is, of course, wonderful. He was, and is a genius. So, and then like even on here, a couple of other things. I'm not gonna, read all of this, but just looking at this stuff right here to me makes it obvious. And it's just, a few things to show that he knew of occultists. He knew about this stuff. There's no hiding it. He's admitted it. So, like, I don't think it's a stretch to say that, some of his art could be occult art.
Well, yeah, and just the connections he has with other people who are also occultists.
Yes, and now I'm going to go into some of the band art. Pull that up. Fortunately, this is the one bad thing about like doing lives. It sometimes takes a little bit to do all this stuff. Yeah. That's actually a lot of reasons why, believe it or not, for the most part, I normally didn't actually care about doing lives with the occult rejects. But like, because of like having to do all this different like uh, grabbing photos and going to this and that, it can be a problem. But Lux was terrified of doing that, so which I kind of understand. So like this is the kind of shit that like would go on behind the scenes before an edited show comes out.
Well, I think people like to see like, material of stuff like you're
Yeah,
talking on. I think that also helps, bring more of an understanding to a concept when you're, explaining it.
yeah, no, for sure.
Even when I do trainings for work, people are like, more videos and stuff, like, the videos are great. Like, people seem to really like, that being incorporated into, a presentation.
Mm, exactly. Yeah, yeah. I mean, even though I think like from I mean, if you went by my video views, you'd probably think like, damn, nobody really listens to this guy. Unfortunately, that does not does not represent my audio. It's unfortunate that when I do when I do, which isn't too often, even look at the numbers, it's just like you're missing out on so much more if you were to
Mhm.
actually watch the videos, because
Right.
But yeah, I do like to still at least show my receipts. So
Hmm.
now into the bands that he has worked with, or some of the artists. This is just some of them that I'll go through real quick. Like I don't know if you mentioned, I think you might have mentioned this one or not, but whatever. There was a few that I think you did mention. This is Atrocity he worked with. This is Hallucinations.
Hmm.
Atrocity Hallucinations is the debut album by the German death metal band Atrocity. It was released in 1990 by Roadrunner Records and was produced by Scott Burns. It is a concept album which follows the story of a young girl who was sexually abused as a child and her descent into drug abuse, prostitution, and eventual death. The album was reissued in 1997 with the Blue Blood EP. I think just even to just mention a few of the track titles, Deep in Your Subconscious, Abyss of Addiction, and The Last Temptation. Um, and the reason why I'm doing that is just like, I'm not necessarily saying that I guess the artist and the musician have to be aligned with certain things all the time, but I'm just, kind of just showing a little bit about like the people he was working with, I guess. Then you have Attack, Magma. This isn't the clearest picture, but I'm just showing that. We have this. Attack is the seventh studio album by a French rock band, Magma, released on the 5th of March, 1978. Its sound marks a noticeable shift from the sound of the band's previous albums, predominantly consisting of funk and jazz fusion music that incorporates elements of rhythm and blues, gospel, and pop music. And they do have Magma has disbanded for a year after the release of their 1976 album Voodoo. Voodoo. Now, this one I just saw was also very interesting too. The track listing on this album, the last 7 minutes, spiritual Negro song, Rindy or Rinde Eastern song, and then like this one song, the fourth one. I'm probably gonna screw this up, but it looks like Lyrlic Necronomicus Compt. So it's just like,
When did you say the
yeah,
album? What was the date the album was released?
March 5th,
Okay.
1978.
70. I was just thinking because like they had a song, with the number seven. The album was their seventh album, so it seemed like they had a theme of sevens
Mm.
going there.
Now, I didn't actually really go into this. If there's any old heads out there watching this that were into metal, you probably already know what's up. Danzig 3, How the Gods Kill. All right, Danzig, enough said. Not saying he's a bad dude, just, Danzig. Now, this isn't, I found this really fucking interesting. I love this part. Now, obviously, he didn't paint this because it's a photograph. But this is the dead Kennedys Frankenchrist cover that he did artwork for inside.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, yo, why are the dead Kennedys showing us fucking Shriners? They're in order of the Masons. What's going on here?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have H.R. Geiger, who seems like an occultist, putting this inside the album.
Which, like I mentioned, it led to an obscenity lawsuit.
It's just like, yo, it just doesn't add up to me. It's Debbie Harry, Cuckoo, however you say it. Another one of the artwork that he's done. Cuckoo is the debut solo album by the American singer Debbie Harry, released on July 27th, 1981 by Chrysalis Records, produced by Nile Rodgers and Bernard Edwards of Chick. The album was recorded whilst Harry took a break from her band Blondie. It was a moderate commercial success, reaching 25 on the US Billboard 200 and number 6 on the UK album chart. And it was interesting. It was recorded in New York. Emerson, Lake and Palmer, brain salad surgery. Did the artwork for them. Brain Salad Surgery is the fourth studio album by English progressive rock band Emerson, Lake and Palmer, released on the 19th of November, 1973. Their record label, Manticore Records, and distributed by Atlantic Records. It's interesting. I don't even know how to pronounce this one. Mumin, or whatever you're supposed to say that. Hide Your Face did this. Jonathan Davis from Korn.
Mm-hmm.
He designed that microphone he uses. Steve Stevens, Atomic Playboy cover. Playboys. Atomic Playboys is the first studio album by guitarist Steve Stevens, released in 1989 through Warner Brother Records.
It's interesting how it's covering up the right eye.
Yeah. The cover art was done by surrealist artist H.R. Giger, who designed the xenomorph creature in the Alien film series. And here is the Celtic Frost to Omegatherion, which, I mean, that's totally rolling. To Omegatherion. People don't know that. That goes back to Crowley. To Omegatherion album. Yeah, actually, I'm not going to go over that. You already explained it, so there's no point in going back over that. But that is some of the artwork that he has done for bands. And then I am going to show some of his occult art. I think I still have occult art. I have his tarot, too. I do have the Necronomicon, and I do think I may have some tarot to show. So just give me a second here. All right, so we'll go through just some of the imagery and stuff that is in his Necronomicon book. And it's pretty interesting, a little weird. To me, it just proves, and it's like, I'm not trying to like hammer the guy and like automatically say like, oh, this dude's horrible because he's an occultist. That is one thing I also just want to set straight. I'm sure people know by now the way I feel about that. Being an occultist, in my opinion, is not a bad thing at all. The problem with being an occultist comes into when you understand or come into knowledge of what to do with it after the fact. That, in my opinion, determines who you are, where you go. But in my opinion, just being an occultist, does that mean like, Horrible. So I just don't want people to think that automatically him being a cultist means he was totally fucked up. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't, but I'm just trying to at least prove, in my opinion, that this guy obviously was one of them. You know, so and again, it's just interesting how these type of people leave such impacts on people's psyche in arts, movies, media, and then all the circles of people that are around them too. It's just hello. It's up, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
I think. All right, here we go. Sorry, taking a bit for this. All right, so there's the Necronomicon. That's I don't know if it was the front and back or there's multiple different. At this point, I had taken
Hmm.
these notes probably 2 months ago. That might be the book opened, or that could be the
Mm.
front and back.
It looks like it is like laid open on its
That's what I thought. Yeah, that's
cover.
what it looked like it that way. We have that. I mean, got Baphomet.
It almost looks like they could be the universal hexagram behind Baphomet.
Yeah, yeah, with
Like
the
right directly, yeah, it looks almost like it creates.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, see, like, not even I would hate to get into it now because it'd be totally different. But again,
Hmm.
like, it was even on somebody. It was on McLovin. I wish I could remember the exact name of the channel. Shout out to them. They were doing some amazing work yesterday, talking about eye symbolism in occultism. I would again going back to that. If we were to go back into the eye stuff, I can totally understand what this is showing me if I was to put it in that context, or not totally understand, but I could totally see what this thing is trying to show you. What event or what part of your inside of your eye is experiencing some sort of alchemy right now. So it's just so these things are like very interesting. How like one person could be seeing this as like some sort of horrible thing, and like believe it or not, I mean I hate to say it, but like when I even cover the brain, there's things that look just like Baphomet in our fucking head. Literally, parts of our
Hmm.
brain look like Baphomet's head. So I mean, I guess at that point we're all going to hell. I mean, so maybe these things aren't always what people assume it to be when an artist is doing. This one is this one
Oh
is coming
yeah,
out
I've
like
seen
a
this
little
one.
extreme.
Dancing condoms.
Wild.
Hmm. Now he has like on his like little train ride thing, like sculptures like that throughout it.
That's creepy.
Yeah.
Him right there. This is weird.
Hmm.
All that weird shit right on the left. And you know what I did want to mention even before too is like even with the alien, the whole idea with the alien. You know how like it kind of like covers your mouth and your face.
Hmm.
You want to start getting into like certain things with silence. Even with magic and the whole thing with like meditating and your eyes closed or whatever. If you think about the way like or the face hugger and then how it goes
Hmm.
inside you, if you look if like in the series that I'm coming out with, there is fluid that is inside your eyeball that actually literally follows you all the way down your spinal cord. And if you're, a female, a woman, and can give birth to a child, specify. That
Just for clarification here.
that will follow all the way through the umbilical cord to your child, and then birthing that. So I mean, I could see some sort of story going on there in an
Hmm.
occult sense.
You can see it seems like he does put a lot of crosses. in his artwork.
Some weird stuff.
Mm-hmm. I mean, not the type of stuff I'd hang on my walls, but
No, I mean, I will say like some of his stuff I think is like kind of weird, but I mean, I wouldn't put it on my walls, but I mean, people say unfortunately, the guy's a good artist. I think. Baphomet on the upside down cross. Yo, you know what I loved about this, and I really hope somebody. I can't remember the name. I don't know why I have Melissa in the head. I think that's probably wrong. Some weird name, but like, I doubt it. I doubt anybody's gonna remember. Holy fucking doorbell! Did you hear that?
I heard something, but I didn't know what it was.
It's unfortunate because I live in like there's other, and I live in an apartment. There's other apartments here. Sometimes when these people come and drop stuff off, they just like everybody. Thanks for letting me know. The guy across the hall. All right, back. Let's pay attention. There was, I remember a long time ago, and I found it interesting, and I still do wonder, like, is it kind of like anything that we've been shown with space? Is it just like bullshit and occult symbolism? But like, there was this thing going around, this video, where like supposedly they had found like this mummified chick on like I think like the moon or Mars or something. And it had some name to it, and she had like this shit on her eyes, keeping her eyes closed, whatever. And like it got kind of popular and like went around like, and now all of a sudden it is kind of like hard to find. If I
How
could
long ago
remember,
was that?
if I could remember like the exact name, I think like that's like you can find it, but it's like how do you even Google that?
How long ago was that around?
Oh, I remember that back probably at least 10, 12, 15 years ago. Like that was like something that was like kind of obscure on YouTube, but like was popular like among, conspiracy theorists of like thinking it's like, oh, look, there was civilizations there, and those are the people that have come here, shit like that. And it looks so fucking much like this. And I'm like, oh man. Because sometimes you get people joking around that like Kubrick and the moon. I'm like, shit, was that like some low budget mind fuck using a different artist?
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know. I sort of wonder shit like that. This is some weird shit. Necronomicon too. Just yeah, that's just like weird creep. Oh, look at that. I mean, we even got Liberaz. Liberaz denounced the Crowley. I mean, yeah, kind of knew what he was. Fuck. This is the one that I think is called like 666 the Beast. I should have known the name, but again, like I said, I did this stuff so long ago, I have lost a little bit. But this is the one that's like associated with Crowley. Look at the. Hello.
Wow.
Weird stuff.
Yeah.
Is that like the Tree of Life? Very weird.
It almost reminds me of those old Renaissance paintings where people are suffering in hell.
Yeah.
In a biomechanic, like they're all contorted and like being tortured.
Yes. It's like something you would have seen in like those track books going around.
Now that looks like a mockery of the crucifixion. Like that looks like a crown of thorns.
So it's a hungry sandworm from Beetlejuice. Another one. I mean, I know this is like a lot. I'm going through a lot. Look, it even has stuff for Dune.
Yeah.
See, this is the point where it's like people who are going to be listening to this are going to be like, oh, yeah, this is just a lot of silence and just showing weird art.
Right.
Because like if I was to get into all of it, this would turn into like a 2-hour show that I'm
Oh,
not
for
trying to get.
sure. Yeah, if we were to break down each one, that would be a series, not.
Like here is just like Archer, type of
Oh
symbolism,
yeah.
stuff going on, Yeah, I think I got this one because of just the upside down.
Are those faces on either side, or
It looks like there's a bunch of faces and almost
almost
like a child's.
Janice like?
This is him chilling. It's your boy HR, just chilling. There you go. So yeah, that was his Necronomicon book, everybody. That was his book, folks. So yeah, I mean, like I definitely think just from that book too, it shows that he has like occult influences
Yeah, for sure.
in the stuff that he does. So,
Not just influence, but knowledge.
yeah, I would. Yeah, I do think. There was another interview I had to come across too that I think where he does get into Crowley, and I think believe it or not, if people want to go and use the Wayback Machine, I think you can kind of you find actual like if you go through like magazines, there's certain ways or whatever ways of finding it. Yeah, because this is actually something that I have noticed. This is going to get off topic for a little bit, but things that I have noticed with certain things, like I've seen, we've read the documents, like be able to show you stuff like from like magazines, articles that were interviews with people that like
Yeah.
you don't fucking think about now 20 years ago or 30 years ago. Nobody even owns this shit anymore, hardly. Or some like collector might have that because they're a huge fan of it. But like things came out of people's mouths sometimes then in interviews that if everybody knew it, their opinion might be a little bit different about sometimes of people. Like real quick, we read the documents. It was just showing Trump admitting how many that fucking what's his face Epstein's been on his plane. So just because the guy wasn't coming up on Epstein's log doesn't mean the dude wasn't on his plane.
Sure.
Like what the fuck, what I'm saying? But like you would never see that out now. But like so there's like things that like that's what I was actually doing, trying to look for like actual old articles because I had noticed that was one thing that was big with him in like a lot of like metal and horror. He was kind of like big and on a lot of those things, and people are interviewing him and talking to him. And like some of them did kind of have like a little bit more of like, I guess, an honest conversation with the guy. And he did get into like again, like saying that he was interested in Crowley, but like it was a little too much for me. Like he thought that it was just way too advanced.
Right.
So like at that point to me, it's like, well, in my opinion, it's like you're already admitting you're a occultist. That's not the one that you're probably mainly
subscribing to
or inspired by.
Yeah.
But you do understand maybe certain aspects and can incorporate those ideas and archetypes that you think you understand.
Right.
And then I'm just going to show here real quick some of the tarot, and then we'll wrap it up. I'm just rambling now. I will pull up the Chariot. Who's got that? The Chariot. I guess like if you, this is even again, and I hate to do it again, but like even when I was on that McLovin show yesterday, I just jumped on because they have open panels, which I think is cool. Again, not trying to like fanboy the show, but like you can jump in too if you want to click on that StreamYard link, and you can jump in on the panel and have a really interesting discussion. I mean, yesterday I was even showing them stuff of the Aura Serrata, and like I'm realizing it now, like it's like the same exact thing. That little half of a little shield looking thing. I have pictures of it. That like if you were to remove all that stuff in front of it, you'd be like, holy crap. Like that's almost like he just redrew that.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's
Yeah.
weird. The devil card. Again, a lot of this stuff is actually stuff we've already seen.
Right.
This was the Hierophant. The High Priestess. she's, she's actually prepared
The
and ready to
dancing
go.
they look like they're dancing condoms, like and the line doing the conga. I don't know. Oh my god.
Oh, it's like the first time you go to hook up with the chick and she goes into the fucking nightstand and pulls out the condom. Like,
Oh my god.
she's ready to go.
Oh my god.
I'm an ass.
This is
Justice. See, it was weird before. Now, like I had said that it kind of reminded me of, the Archer, but like again, I could be, I still could be right, but then again, like Justice, I would assume that there's also
the scale.
Yeah. Yeah. But then again, see, now this is even another thing that I think is weird is like, I don't want to get into it too much, but like, I was mentioning the Zonules of Zin before.
Yeah.
And they that's in our eye, and they do make like an X formation. And when you start to raise the lens, depending or not, you start to go like that. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're looking at it from that angle, not down, you're like looking, I don't know how to explain it, but like, so
the angle opens up.
It changed like that. So I have often wondered if that's like even when you start doing stuff like that in magical rituals.
Mm-hmm.
When Laura Palmer, think about it this way: if you have an X and you go to close it like that, Laura Palmer, in my opinion, was the Scarlet Whore in Twin Peaks, or one of the many. And she does one of the weirdest things that she says: sometimes my arms bend back. Now, if you're thinking of the whole part of the lens changing and these fibers doing that, an X would start to come closer like that. And now, reasoning why I'm getting into all of that, I'm going to make it real quick. I'm going to break this down. The Zonules of Zin look like little hairs or like little wooden sticks or fibers that are going to move that lens up and down. You need to raise your wood or your stick. And then when you do, the fluid in your eyes actually start changing and switching directions. So when you raise your rod, the waters start to flow inside your eyeball. So there could be some real deep stuff in here with that, I think. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Start going back to the whole, like, even just the X formation changing. Just I know that was like a huge random tangent for all of this, but you have to start. I think even thinking of just like watching movements and just changing of people's positions could actually showing things going on inside yourself. The Lovers. The Moon. Like what I thought was interesting with this too, like again, maybe I'd have to turn it upside down. Who knows? Like how I'm not in his head, but like the moon, even in the Kabbalah, is known as like some kind of like mechanical machine that like projects the imagery of this world down here into Malkuth. And like this does kind of have like a obviously a laser or a light or something, light being shined. Akron, an occultist, life and work From 1961 to 1964, Akron attended the Catholic Cantonal Secondary School in St. Gallen. In 1967, he completed a commercial apprenticeship at some crazy ass name I'm never going to try to say. Subsequently, he worked as a musician in various nightclubs in Germany. In 1969, he founded Blackstone, one of the first Swiss underground magazines, and came into contact with esoteric currents. And he was also in 1992 the H.R. Geiger Tarot, created by Akron in collaboration with the Swiss artist H.R. Geiger. I don't want to have to read all that stuff that's in there, so I just skipped a bunch of it. But what I was getting to is this guy who's known as an occultist even worked with him on that tarot. So, yeah, interesting to add. Sun card. H.R. Geiger Tarot. Akron, or however you want to pronounce his name.
Oh, it keeps making me think of the rapper Akon.
And there's the
Terrible.
tarot. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what I got. So I know that was if you were just listening, you're probably like, wow, that was like kind of boring. But you know. So yeah, that is the artwork and a little bit of the background of H.R. Giger. Again, like I said, I think the main reason, really, and I preface this, I'm going to say this and reiterate this again. Just because you're an occultist, that does not automatically make you a bad person. I am not really doing this this episode to have an opinion on this guy. It is more of just, again, somebody that I'm sure everybody who's probably watching this knows aliens, or knows of something now that like he's done artwork for. It's just really just to point out, like, one, just artists could be showing occult symbolism in ways you have no idea. For all you know, that whole alien stuff is all just about a bunch of occult archetypes being personified.
And it does seem like there's a lot of artists that are into the occult, the surrealist artists. Like, Geiger was friends with Salvador Dali, and Salvador Dali was friends with Andre Breton, who I covered in the Mussolini series episode that we had, because he wrote that Arcane 17 about the star card of the tarot, and Melusine being the alchemical symbol. But it does seem like occultism is a theme that runs with many of the artists from the surrealism movement.
That's just like a perfect example. Just all these names and peoples and 1 to 6 degrees of, just like something is up with that, I think, regardless. Sometimes I even could see how some people, like, again, there's artwork of his that I don't care for, but I could actually be like, okay, but from the stuff that I've looked at, I think he's a magician who understands a lot. So I may not like his artwork, but it's almost like I'm still somehow giving him cred, because I understand it's like he understands shit most people don't. Without giving him cred. You know what I'm saying? What I'm getting at? It's sometimes I do think that's why some people will still respect, maybe, or say that they're like a good artist, is because they're understanding like what they're doing may not totally fully like the way that they're presenting it. And sometimes I even think that's why movies and just, directors and artists are sometimes revered as like some of the great ones. It's because like they like spun such a fucking great story peppered with occultism. Nobody even picked it up. You personified an experience so fucking good people ate that shit up and actually thought these people were real.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that happens in art. And yeah, again, just aliens, all those people he worked with, and occultists all seem to be into this weird stuff. Something I think is up with understanding occult science and getting somewhere in life. Flat
Mm-hmm.
out. I guess that's the best way to describe what this was about. So thank you very much, Nix. Thank you everybody who was still in the chat and still listening and still watching. Again, like I said before, when this drops as a podcast, not to create clickbait, but if I would suggest to try to go watch a video version of it on any of the platforms that will be on BitChute, Rumble, or YouTube. So yeah, I think that you'll get much more of a benefit out of it. And with that said, Nix, thank you very much again for covering this topic with me. I thoroughly enjoyed doing that. I'm hoping actually to go forward. That'll be something that we do more often. Maybe every once in a while we
Mm-hmm.
come up with a topic that we can both agree on and both
Yeah,
do a little bit of digging together and just covering it together. Very
absolutely.
informative, easy going, fun episode for me, and I'm sure it was for you.
Yes.
Let everybody know where they can find your stuff again on Instagram.
Yes, my Instagram is NYX, NYX, period 1223. You can find me on Instagram there and all the research I do with all the posts I post.
Very good. Thank you very much. And
Yeah.
go check out
Thanks for
her.
having me.
Oh no, of course. Listen, you put in some work, so I appreciate it. So, thank you all for jumping in on the chat. I think I might have seen a few. I saw a few new names. That's what's up. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I've seen like new names that are not as new, reoccurring names. That's what's up. Thank you very much. That's cool to see that you have come back. I hope you all enjoy that. And until the next one, everybody be well.